This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right. There he is, Mr. Benjamin Allbright, KOA Insider. What's up? How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well, man. How you doing?
Good. Just hanging in there, waiting for the printer to turn on and our crypto to explode. That's what I'm waiting for, unfortunately. So we'll see. I'm thinking late third, fourth quarter is when maybe
We're in the accumulation phase right now. That's we're still in the accumulation phase.
Is that what you're doing? Because that's what I'm doing. I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm loving this Bitcoin dip actually because it's allowing me to stack a little more Bitcoin. Are you? I know you're an AMP guy, but are you stacking any Bitcoin?
Yeah, I've got 2.5 Bitcoin, and then I continue to add to the pile on that. I pulled just about everything I had out of the market back in what was late February. I put it, got myself a liquidity pool, and then started moving stuff over to to Bitcoin and to some of the different crypto. Yeah, I know I'm on AMP as well, so trying to do that, trying to keep up with everything as far as that goes, and stay ahead of market downturns with the your boy there, the Down Jones.
Yeah, the Down Jones. Yeah, it's just it's crazy stuff, dude. All right, man. So from an outsider's point of view, when you look at this place right now where it's at with the Miami Dolphins, how bad is it? Because brother, I Dolphin Nation doesn't like to hear it from me, but like I have no hope for these guys right now. The way people are jumping ship and the cap position that they're in. Plus, I haven't been convinced with Mike McDaniel, I got to say, for 3 years now. So your thoughts from your point of view out there, from the mile high point of view.
Well, let me start off with this. Let me give a little disclaimer on a friend, and I've known Mike McDaniel for a long time. He's from here in Denver. He used to when he was in high school, he used to dance here at Michelle Latimer Dance Academy. He was a ballroom dancer back then and hip hop dancer. He's Mike's a good guy. Mike's been through his ups and downs over the years. Congrats on him for the sobriety and getting right there and all that kind of stuff. But he's been through a lot. I'll say that he's probably what Miami needed initially in terms of a players coach, in that. But the problem with the players coach is you've got to have a lieutenant that's in that locker room that can be the hard ass for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? You've got to have somebody that will hold players accountable and everything else. And I'm not sure they've got that right now. This is going to be a benchmark year for Miami in the terms that, Stephen Ross already laid it out. You guys got to make the playoffs. You've got to win a playoff game, and if you don't do that, you're not going to be back next year. And that goes for Chris Greer, that goes for Mike McDaniel. This is a year for that kind of stuff. It's the same thing with, for instance, like the New York Giants. They gave it one more year beyond where they probably would have, just in the sense that, like, hey, all right, we're going to give you an opportunity to see the vision, but the vision better manifest itself pretty quick, or else I'm moving on to somebody else's vision. And so that's where we're at, Miami. That's where we're at with the Giants is a team that, hey, look, I gave you time to get what you needed in here. We've got the ingredients. The meal should be on the stove. You gotta produce something for dinner here, or else I'm gonna find somebody that can cook for me.
And listen, you follow the business side of this as much as anybody out there. The other thing that I've tried to explain to people is they just dished out a ton of contracts in the last year and a half here. And all these contracts are just starting to kick in. And that's the amazing part about the Ramsey one, because you just extended him last year and now he wants out, But that's what I've explained to Dolphin fans, that you could blow these guys out. And whoever you bring in knows that for the next 2 years, they're stuck to a whole bunch of salaries anyway. So bringing back these guys, they've got to fight through this year. And then if you do clean house, whoever comes in knows that even next year it's kind of a mulligan year, because you've got the Tua deal, you've got all that stuff, and you've got to get through that if that doesn't work out. So it's kind of like I've been telling Dolphin fans, this is a really difficult position that they're in, because I know they don't want to hear this, but it's almost like you're 3 years away from starting a rebuild if a miracle doesn't happen this year with Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can't do a complete tear it down to the studs rebuild because of the contract situation. So that's sort of the issue. You have to find somebody with a different vision and hope that they can let their message resonate at that point. The Ramsey thing. I mean, look, I'll just Dolphins fans, you're not going to miss him. He's declined in production. He's declined in terms of what he is as a player. You're not going to miss him. He's not that dude in the locker room. So get what you can for him and move on. And honestly, the question here isn't really the Jalen Ramsey portion of it; it's the Tyreek Hill portion of it. I'm not sure you can deal him because of that contract, but that really is the thing. Kansas City got fed up with his antics. They topped him off a few times with new money, and then they got tired of it and let him move on. Now Miami's feeling the pain with the same thing. Tyreek Hill's
They weren't going to pay him last year.
right.
There's a rift. There was a rift in that building last year. Some of the people in that building, I was told, they were not going to guarantee him more money. And then all of a sudden,
Mhm.
late in the offseason, they started to change their mind or something. And I don't know what it was. And somehow I think it's McDaniel that kind of advocates for this because he's Mr. Players coach.
Mhm.
That was a major problem. And you wonder if that created a problem in that building too.
Yeah, and I would say that, in any other situation, you probably would even try to take the captain and move on from him in some way. The problem is you're in a year where you've got to win, right? So if you were going to trade Tyreek Hill at this point and take the hit, you'd have to believe that maybe drafting a Matt Golden would suddenly turn things around. And who thinks that Golden's going to turn to that dude in year one? Receivers usually take a year or two to kind of hit their stride. So, it kind of presents a rock and a hard place situation for all that. And Stephen Ross is looking around the division and saying, well, Buffalo turned it around in 3 years when they got Josh Allen. Oh, by the way, we got a decline in the Patriots. They're down years for the last couple of years. The Jets have been jetsing. Why couldn't we get in there and make the playoffs and make a run? What was the problem here? And so that's sort of been the thing as he looks at it from a top down, view. He's like, well, the conditions were set. We got our quarterback. We got to it. We the division was soft. We had one other team in the division that we really had to go up against. So why didn't we produce? What's the problem? And that's really where the organization is, from the top end at this point.
And look where you're at in your backyard. You went through a season where most of us thought, yeah, no way Denver makes the playoffs. They got a rookie quarterback. They've got a whole bunch of dead cap space that they couldn't improve their team. And somehow or another, dude, Sean Payton and company shocked everyone. First of all, I didn't even think Bo Nix would be that good, so I was wrong there. But man, and that's kind of the miracle that Miami is hoping for. What happened in Denver last year?
Yeah, for the Broncos, for one thing, they got healthy. They already had the good defense, kind of built in. They got healthy, and then on the offensive side, they just did enough, and that was sort of the thing. Bo, he struggled the first quarter of the season. He started to sort of pick it up, I think, about a third of the way through the season, and it got better as it went on. And now you're kind of looking at it like, okay, this could definitely work. But the Broncos did it the Broncos did it in a pretty tough division. You think you got Kansas City in there already. The Chargers are on the upswing with Harbaugh, and now you've got the Raiders in there with Pete Carroll, who figures to make them better. That's a tough division. It's a little bit different than having a doormat like the Jets and the Patriots sitting there, where you should be able to get 3 or 4 out of those two. You probably could drop one of them, but you should be able to get 3 or 4 out of those. 2 or 3 out of those from the Jets and the Patriots, and then you look around the rest of your schedule and figure you should be able to get enough to get to 10 wins and get in the playoffs, which is what it takes these days. So, I just think Stephen Ross is frustrated when he's like, the conditions were ripe and we didn't cash in at this point. So you guys got this year to get it there, and if you don't, then I'm gonna find someone who will.
NFL insider Benjamin Allbright joining us. And by the way, you can follow him on Twitter at Allbright NFL. All right, Ben, before I get to the Dolphins at 13, enlighten me here, bro. And again, I've said this with a couple of people out there. It's blasphemous what I'm about to say here in South Florida. I've said it many times over. Tell me why I'm wrong, dude. Everybody's got Cam number one. I know his physical abilities is superior to Shador. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But the passing ability, the accuracy, the anticipatory skills, all that stuff from Shador, I was very impressed with overall. Cam, I love his moxie, but he played a lot of ballsy football down here, hero ball, and he had a line that gave him 5, 7, 9 seconds at time. And he also through some crazy stuff. He didn't really play on time, 3, 5, 7-step drops, plant throw. Not a lot of structured football here in Miami. So I'm wondering, what is it that everybody sees? I know the talent is there, but why is Cam for sure better than Shador?
Well, I don't know that he is for sure better, but it's one of those things where when it comes to the NFL, they default to physical traits. They just do. The league defaults to physical traits. Those are the things I can't coach. I can coach everything else. There's kind of an inherent coaching arrogance, and there needs to be. I mean, you have to sort of have an arrogance to believe that you can go out and coach, $1 million athletes and make them better, right? Just like there's got to be an arrogance to doing this job, right? There's got to be an arrogance to think that people need to hear my opinion on all this, right? So there's an inherent arrogance in certain things. Not all arrogance is bad. That said, the league does have sort of a collective default arrogance in the sense that if you've got the physical tools, I can coach up the rest of it, and so that's where the Cam Ward thing sort of comes from. With Shador, he's a little slight in the build. The arm strength isn't quite kind of what you'd want. I mean, it's NFL level, but it's not really what you want. Like I compare Shador to Teddy Bridgewater, to be honest with you, before the injury, before the horrible injury. Because he's similar size, similar build, similar arm, anticipatory, high IQ, everything you want from the neck up. But the arm strength isn't quite there, and maybe he takes the safe play a little too much on third down. And Teddy, when he was out here in Denver, set the all-time NFL record for completion percentage on third down while not getting a first down. The all-time NFL record on that. So, Shador without Travis has kind of sort of been that guy where he'll take the safe thing, and he has some athleticism, but he doesn't really use it. Like that's the thing. He doesn't really use it. It reminds you a little bit of
He's a pass.
yeah. Well, yeah. And he's not trying to pick up yards with his legs. He'll maybe try to buy a little time, but he is tough. I will say that he was behind a paper thin offensive line and got absolutely demolished, and he still hung in there. There was never a moment it was too big for him. But there's a few things in there. He does tend to drift a little bit out the back of the pocket, which will lead to some sacks that are his creation and not just the O line. And then he doesn't really use that athleticism that he's got. It reminds you of Derek Carr. Derek Carr ran like a 4.6 40, and nobody's accusing Derek Carr of out there just lighting the world on fire with his athleticism. They've got that tape speed or that time speed, but not that tape speed. So it's one of those things where with Shador, I think that's sort of the thing. There's not any elite tool other than the football IQ, and there's not anything where you're saying, well, he could grow into this. He's a guy who's already got the high football IQ. What am I coaching him up to be? And so I think there's a hesitance on some side. Sometimes people can overthink it. You get that stinking thinking, right? Where you paralysis by overanalysis. Sometimes a guy who's got a high football IQ and distribute the football can work. I mean, Andy Dalton made playoff games, right? So you can have a guy that can do this. I think Shador will be fine starter in the league. But the reason that Cam Ward's going number one is people default to tools. They just do. That's why guys like Anthony Richardson get drafted fourth overall instead of where they should have been in the third round.
Oh my God. When I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, he's just an athlete. If you watch them at Florida, he had no accuracy whatsoever, dude.
Yeah.
And
It was
it's
Trey
just,
Lance who played at Florida. That's what it was.
yeah, it's exactly. And then you nailed it in your answer. It's the arrogance. Like I can make him the better player, and that's it. Oh, he'll bring the talent. I'll make him the player. And it's kind of crazy in that sense. All right. Who's the best player in the draft, dude? Carter?
Yeah, I mean it's Carter or Hunter. Those are the two best players in this draft. It's just depending on how you look at it. I mean, Travis Hunter, I view him more as a corner. And some people look at him as a receiver. I view him as a corner that you get some receiver packages for. And in that vein, I think he could be the best player in this draft. Carter, yeah, a generational pass rush prospect. Those two guys are kind of can't, I hate to say can't miss, but they're can't miss guys. As far as the rest of it goes, there's some other players in there that you kind of look at like, man, that dude, Michael Williams out of Georgia. I think he's one of those guys that I think is can't miss. Janty, is a guy that can't miss. And I'm a huge fan of Omarion Hampton. the running back out of North Carolina. Reminds me a lot of Deuce McAllister. I think he's going to be a stud in the league. We'll see. Tyler Warren is another guy. So I think there's 8, 9, maybe 10 guys in this draft that you put that blue chip, put that purple sticker, whatever your grading system is, on that guy. And then after that, from about 11, 12 to about 100, man, the grade is so similar. Like, it's so similar. There's a drop off from, because there's a drop off into that second tier, and then there's a fat second tier of players in this draft. And so, like, if it's me, my strategy in this draft would be, especially if I'm picking somewhere between like 10 and, and 30, 10, 32, like I would try to trade back a little bit if I can find anybody to
So
trade
you're
back with
telling
me.
the Dolphins, you're telling
Yeah.
the Dolphins at 13 to trade down.
Yeah, trade down unless one of those blue chip guys falls in your lap, right? And there's always the possibility that could happen. But unless one of those blue chip dudes falls in your lap, trade down, multiply your picks, and pick up more ammo in that range where this draft is fat, and get more people that are going to produce for you right away. Than trying. You got Broncos fans here in Denver trying to tell them to trade up from 20 to go get Janty, and I'm like, bro, in this draft, are you kidding me? It's loaded with running backs. Like, you're going to give away assets on into next year to move up to go get a running back that could get, what are you doing? So, same thing with Miami. If you can find a partner, you can find somebody that, if Shadur's sitting there and you can find somebody that wants him, God, trade back, pick up the extra capital and go get you some more ammo.
Okay. All right. So, but the other thing is now, because of the whole Jalen Ramsey mess, all right, well, it's not deep at corner. So if you're Miami, do you say, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. We could get a Will Johnson here. He's going to be a damn good corner. We can get a lockdown guy. And then in the second round, this is a defensive tackle heavy draft. We can get a guard in the second round, 2 positions that are of need in a big time way. Now, maybe you want to get a tackle / guard at the 13th pick. If Banks falls to you, because you're starting Patrick Paul now. If Patrick Paul doesn't work out, do you get a guard that can play tackle and then bring Paul in? Or do you go Will Johnson? Because again, corner's not like deep like that, like really special, but guard and defensive tackle is. If you're the Dolphins, you can wait for the second and third rounds to fill those needs. How do you attack that? Because I love your talk about moving down, but you will also move out of getting a corner like Will Johnson at that point. How do you attack that?
Yeah, you've really got you've got 3 corners there at the top. You got Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, and then you got Barron, and that's really that top tier. And then after that, there's a little bit of a drop off. The question is whether you want to come away. You already mentioned Banks, so I'm going to use him as the example. The question is whether you want to come away with Banks and then maybe like an Amos in the second round, the corner out of Ole Miss, or if you want to flip that and you want to come away with a Barron or a Johnson there at the top, and then you're looking at some of the offensive linemen. I will say this: there's like 7 offensive linemen going to go in round 1 of this draft. Like, it's got a fat top tier, but then the drop off is bad. So I think the drop off is bigger for offensive linemen than it is for corner in this draft. So if you've got the right offensive lineman and you believe he's the dude, then I take him at 13 and grab the corner like Amos in the second round. If you don't believe in the guy, then and you do believe in the corner, then go get the corner and hope that there's somebody, one of those offensive linemen got pushed down to you by maybe teams trading in the back of the first round trying to get quarterbacks like Dart, that kind of stuff. And then maybe you get one to fall in your lap that way. But that's a riskier strategy in terms of looking at the drop-offs in the 2 tiers between the position groups in this draft.
All right, so guard, who do you like for the Dolphins? And remember, they play more of a zone scheme, an outside zone scheme. Who fits in the second and third rounds? Because you're not doing it in the first round unless you're getting a tackle that can play some guard for you. Just because, again, the only reason I mention it, it's because of the insurance policy, Paul. But in second and third rounds, that's going to be more of the guard area. Who do you like in those areas?
There's nobody that I'm sitting there screaming or banging the table for. There's a couple of guys. Gray Zabel's going to be long gone by that point, and he's guard center at the NFL level. He's considered the best guy. He's going to be long gone at that point. In fact, he'll probably go to the Seahawks in the first round. Once you start looking after that, the thing about zone guys, and I'll say because zone blocking originated here in Denver with Alex Gibbs, back in the day. McDaniel's one of the disciples off that. What I will say when it comes to that is normally we laugh off the idea of looking at 40 times for offensive linemen. But for zone guys, it translates. So look for guys that had a great 10-yard split and a good 40-yard time that can move, because they got to be able to move and get to that second level to be able to execute those kind of blocks and run that system. So look for the athletic type guys. Like, that's the thing. Take chances on athleticism instead of strength. If you're running power gap, you want those hosses in there. You want the big boys that repped out 45 times on the bench. But you're running the zone, man. If you're running zone, they don't have to be as functionally strong. You basically want movable road cones at that point, right? Theoretically. So look for the guys that had the higher athletic potential. With that kind of stuff. It's part of the reason, because the Broncos, they were converting to zone back in the day. That's part of the reason they took Garrett Bowles over Ryan Ramczyk back in the day, because Sean Payton down in New Orleans was running power gap, but in Denver they were running the zone, and Garrett Bowles was more athletic. Bowles took a couple of years to get there, but at the end of the day, Bowles is still playing. He's still playing at a high level. Ryan Ramczyk retired yesterday, so find those guys that are a little bit more athletic. They're a little bit leaner in the build, and you look at them and you're like, really, that guy's a guard. But find those type of guys, and you can find them in rounds 2 through 4 that have a little bit more athleticism to them. Coach them up, and you'll be more successful.
By the way, just a little bit off the beaten path. How crazy is it getting in Boulder since Dion got there? Hell, they just got the film festival and everything now. So how's the buzz in Boulder? Have you been there for any of that stuff?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's Colorado as a football program was dead. I mean, it was dead. It was non-existent. I mean, they hadn't won. They had one bowl game in 20 something years. When Mike McIntyre was here, you had a series of failed. Outside of that,
So how's the buzz there? Because it looks, since Dion got there, there's been like this momentum building, and I saw they got the film festival from Salt Lake and everything. I'm like, holy shit, dude, they're adding that too.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. Colorado's been a dead football program for so long. I mean, you had with Dan Hawkins and John Embry, and Mike McIntyre was the lone bright spot. You had Mel Tucker and Carl Durrell. I'll say this: whatever the results are, and Colorado's not exactly set the world on fire. They've been to one bowl game in 2 years and not been the playoffs, but that's certainly a light years better than the 1-win seasons they were doing before that. Whatever you thought of CU, it's the center of the college football world now. Dion's got that thing, like all eyes are on Colorado at this point. And he's sort of like, it's interesting to me because people are like, well, he's doing something nobody's ever done before. Well, that's horse. That's what, that's horse excrement. It's been done before. It was done at USC. Pete Carroll did. He's doing the same thing Pete Carroll did. It's just Deion Sanders. He's got sort of a flashier way of talking about it, and so people are like, well, wait, this won't work. This what, dude? Pete Carroll did it at USC. He resurrected USC doing the exact same stuff. The DJ during practice, all that. Celebrities on the sidelines, all that stuff. So I don't begrudge that. I think the people that most of the critics of it, I look at them and I'm like, I don't know what I don't think you know what you're talking about if you don't know that that this has been tried before. Now this is the NIL era, so there's a little bit different component to it. I mean, Pete was just giving them bags under the table. Now the money's on the top of the table.
He's doing it in Colorado, which that's where you got to give him mad props. USC, you're in LA.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So at least if you go resurrect USC, that's USC. It's got a rich history, but to do that in what he's doing in Colorado, man, I'm super impressed, man, because like you said, he's the buzz in college football now, and College Game Day is going there.
Mm-hmm.
I never even thought of going to Boulder ever. Please.
Yeah.
Do.
We had the Colorado Pro Day, just what was it, last week or whatever. I was there, and I've been to a lot of pro days over the last 15 years. It was probably the most NFL people I've ever seen at a pro day. And I've been to some that are packed with prospects. It was fantastic. I'm sitting there, at the end of they're running the 40s. I'm sitting there right at the edge doing the timing or whatever, right there, and I'm sandwiched in between Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski over here, and I got Joe Shane and Brian Dable right next to me here, and I'm like, fellas, I feel like I should be making a pick at some point if I got 2 and 3 sitting right here. So, it was absolutely just packed. I mean, there were, you had owners out there. You had Jimmy Haslam out there at the pro day. So, it's really become a central and a focus point in college football. He'll have to turn that into wins in the next couple of years. But the fact that they're even in bowl games when previously you're talking about a 1-2 win team is certainly something.
Yeah, he's done an amazing job in that turnaround. All right, follow him on Twitter at Allbright NFL. You can catch his work there. He does excellent work for KOA. Great insider around the league. Keep stacking, my brother. We will end up in the winning zone, man. We will catch up down the line. Thank you for taking some time.
Absolutely, brother. Take care.
You got it. There you go. Benjamin Allbright coming through for us. Love it. Good dude. Knows this shit. Knows this league inside and out. Cannot complain, man. Good people. Good people.
This is the